Hey, welcome, folks. It's good to be with you today. Now, listen, this is a special edition of the 700 Club from all across America. You called and left your voice-made questions. They're yours. Today, we're going to hear your voices on the air, and we'll answer your questions live. That's all coming up. But first, in the news, tragedy in Ukraine. Missiles are raining down on civilians. Cities on fire, and millions are fleeing for their lives in Ukraine. The Russian army has resorted to scorched earth warfare after meeting fierce resistance from Iranian forces. The capital city of Kiev is now under strict curfew and bracing for the worst in the next few hours. Charlene Aaron reports on this brutal onslaught.
As the Russians are stalled outside Ukraine's capital city, Kyiv, they're relentlessly bombarding the civilian population. Rockets, missiles, and bombs leaving significant damage. Residential neighborhoods, hospitals, and other civilians targeted. And Ukraine's leaders expect the onslaught to get worse. CBN's George Thomas is in Kyiv.
The latest reporting from the Pentagon is that the Russians have launched over 900 missiles since the start of the war. One of those missiles hitting this multi-story apartment building on the west side of Kyiv. You can still see the smoke billowing. This happened yesterday, and all the surrounding buildings as well. You can see their windows have been basically blown out, even to that building apartment over there. What you are seeing today is that because the Russians have failed over these many days to completely encircle and capture Kyiv, that they are instead going after civilian targets. The mayor of Kyiv has imposed a province-wide curfew. Nobody can go out of their homes until Thursday at 7 a.m. Why? Because the mayor fears that the next few hours are going to be probably the most dangerous hours for this city.
Ukrainian President Zelensky addressing Congress today in a virtual speech, thanking the U.S. for its help and asking for billions more in new support. With reports that Russian troops are low on morale over their lack of progress, Zelensky says Russia's demands in peace talks are sounding more realistic. But U.S. State Department officials urge caution.
We have yet to find a Russian interlocutor that is either able or willing to negotiate in good faith, and certainly not in the context of de-escalation.
Meanwhile, 3 million have fled the war in Ukraine, creating the largest refugee crisis in Europe since World War II. CBN's Operation Blessing is on the border, greeting refugees with gift bags full of snacks, hygiene items, and other supplies. And from a warehouse on the Polish side of the border, they're packing trucks full of crucial supplies and sending them into Ukraine.
These goods will be a real blessing to the people of Ukraine who really need it right now because there's a shortage in the shops. We have teams ready in Ukraine to distribute these goods. So it's amazing to see how God is bringing these strategic locations together and the people together to help make this happen.
Meanwhile, President Biden is expected to announce $800 million in new military aid to Ukraine. He'll go to Brussels next week for the NATO summit on deterrence and defense efforts against Putin's war. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
I want to say about Operation Blessing, we've been operating all over Europe for quite some time, but we've got a major team going with Orphan's Promise and Operation Blessing in Ukraine. And if you want to help those poor people, you can do it through Operation Blessing. That's the number. Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund, CBN Center, and you can call in. Now, let me talk to you a little bit before we go into our questions. You know, the Polish people were going to make mega jets available, but we said, oh, no, that'll be an escalation. And well, how about a no-fly zone? Well, that would be an escalation. Well, we've got to be careful because we don't have an interlocutor to deal with this problem, and it might be an escalation. let me tell you something, just real carefully. We have in the ocean just one of many Trident submarines that have enough nuclear power on board to eviscerate any of the cities in Russia. Putin knows it, we know it. So can you imagine playing poker and every time you called a bluff, the other guy threw in a winning hand? Well, that's what's happening now. We are so terrified of, quote, an escalation. We won't use the MiGs the Poles have got. We won't have a no-fly zone. We won't send the necessary equipment to the Ukraine because we are afraid of an escalation. You heard what the man was saying, oh, we don't have a, quote, interlocutor. Baloney. We have the firepower to wipe out every Russian city, just one Trident submarine. And of course, we're not using it and have no intention of using it. But why doesn't somebody in the administration call Putin's bluff? He's bluffing. And every time he says, well, if you do that, we're going to escalate. Oh, no, you're not, old buddy. We're going to do you if you try to do us, and we'll make it worse, and you know it. Putin knows we're powerful. He doesn't have much of an army. He doesn't have much of an economy. It's a tiny economy, and he's playing a bluff. But unfortunately, we have a man in charge in Washington who doesn't like to stand up to bluffs. He folds his winning hand every single time. Yeah. That's my commentary on it.